So, welcome back, loyal watchers and listeners, to another electrifying episode of Women Who Lead. And this month, we are celebrating fair housing. So, I want to take a moment to recognize the importance of this law for all of us, but especially for us in the real estate industry. And in this episode of Women Who Lead, I am excited to connect with three resilient leaders who are reshaping the landscape of their respective organizations with unwavering determination and innovation. And right now, resilient leadership is so needed as our industry is going through a lot of change and uncertainty. So, hearing how these talented women face challenges head on and emerge stronger, wiser, and even more determined is going to be a huge benefit to all of us. So, again, I'm Teresa Palacio Smith, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Home Services of America and Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. And I'm honored to host this series where I have the opportunity to meet and connect with you and along with some of the most talented women in leadership. So grab your cafecito, ladies, right? We're ready. And tea or energy drink, as one of you recently told me, I always have my energy drink in my cup. And let's get ready to connect with our resilient leaders. So let me introduce first Beth Jimenez. Beth is the Fair Housing and Lending Strategy and Initiatives Manager in Community Banking and Lending. In her role, Beth engages with nonprofits, community advocacy groups, real estate professionals, organizations, and also industry leaders, advocating for housing stability, affordability, and generational wealth creation for underrepresented groups. And that is exactly my role too. So we have a lot in common. We have that same role. Beth has held numerous positions in support of the bank's commitment to diversity and inclusion throughout her career. She currently serves as co-chair to the Strategic Integration Committee within OLA and is also a mentor for Year Up and Lead. And we're going to talk about what those organizations are because I've never heard of Year Up and Lead. Beth is an Arizona State University graduate in Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management from the W.P. Carey School of Business. And she also serves on the board of the NAR Greater Phoenix chapter. And I'm actually going to be, in Phoenix tomorrow, joining Beth and also our group, NAR Greater Phoenix, at the Latina Sabores event in Scottsdale. So I'm so excited about that. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Veronica Hanna is the managing broker of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Phoenix Properties Office. Veronica is a Phoenix native. That's a rarity here in Atlanta. So I don't know how rare that is in Phoenix, but I would imagine y'all have a lot of relos coming into your area. She also has over 25 years of experience in real estate and began her career while in high school. I think that's so interesting. Veronica operates the #1 office within the company, and that is evident because of the pride she takes in mentoring and hiring agents and also catering to individuals at all stages of their career. Veronica is an active member of the community and has been involved in the past in endurance sports, having completed multiple 10Ks and half marathons, something you have in common with Debbie, we're going to talk about in a minute, and also a full marathon while raising funds for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I can't wait to meet her agents later today when I stop by the Scottsdale office. Thanks, Veronica, #1, for having me train on unconscious bias this afternoon, but also for being on the show. And then Debbie McCabe. Debbie is with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Fox and Roach Realtors, the #1 real estate company in the Berkshire Hathaway Home Services network. That is huge kudos, Debbie, because it's a big thing to become #1. And Debbie began her real estate career as a sales associate in 1997. And prior to that, she was a CPA and audit manager for Deloitte. I know that comes in so handy in the work that you do. In 2015, she joined Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Fox and Roach's management team and is now a senior vice president and president of Region 1, the Region 1 in the Philadelphia area. She's also currently chair of the Mainline Chamber of Commerce and was a member of the PAR Professional Standards Committee. Debbie is very involved in her community, serving on the executive committee of Covenant House, Pennsylvania, and her efforts with this organization have led her to be a finalist in NAR's Good Neighbor Award, which is huge huge kudos because a lot of people, submit for that award. Debbie is an avid runner and has completed 22 full marathons in locations including Berlin, Boston, Chicago, London, and New York. Again, there's no way I could do that or ever say that. So I admire both you and Veronica for that talent. Welcome, Debbie, to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And so I always start the questions out for anyone that's in the real estate industry. And all three of you happen to be in real estate. How'd you get started in the business and what does your role entail? So I'll start off with you, Veronica.
Well, I did start in high school, and that was in the early '90s. And back then, you didn't have digital photography, you didn't have the internet like it is today. So huge changes from then till now. Now I run an office. There's just under 200 agents here. We are in the luxury market, and so it's interesting because I do go from training new agents, into the business to experienced agents, and we're negotiating a very strategic, negotiation with high-end homes. So big difference from where I started, but that's kind of how I started into the business. And I have a lot of mentors, so I know we'll get into that later.
Yes, I mean, and what an exciting role that you have, especially in the luxury market, which is a tough market, but we also are very amenable to that. Berkshire Hathaway Home Services is the brand that's forever, right? But also for everyone. And so we manage in all spectrums of the real estate, and your area I know is really high end. So Beth, how about you?
Yeah, so I actually got into the industry right out of college. I was getting ready for my graduation, and I got a call from a recruiter, and they had a lending officer training program, and it sounded really intriguing. And so I went in. I loved what I heard. I started in 2007, which for those of you who are in the industry know that that was an interesting time to start. But I ended up sticking with it and have learned such a great deal. And over the years, I've done different things. I've led different teams of lending officers, was part of the development of a community lending officer organization. And most recently, I am in our fair lending department, which is really focused on not only, of course, ensuring that we're meeting all of our regulatory requirements, right? That's the baseline. But on top of that, really developing strategy for how we ensure that we are meeting the needs of our multicultural and our low to moderate income clients across the board.
What an incredible role. And also the fact that you are also involved with the NARP chapter. We're going to talk a little bit about that because for me, that's the year right just before that I started the NARP chapter in Atlanta. So I started with two other guys, our chapter here in the Atlanta market, but also right it hit at that 2007, 2008. We all know what happened. So you've definitely gone through those difficult times for sure. How about you, Debbie?
So I started my career, as you mentioned, I was an accountant. I was a CPA with Deloitte, manager with the company, and we had an opportunity, my husband and I, for his job to take us to London. So I sort of stopped doing that, and we went over to London for 4 years. And my family was growing, and it was wonderful. When I came back, I was never, I wanted to get back working, and I wasn't really sure what that next step would look like. And my sister was in real estate with, at the time, Prudential Preferred Properties, and started my career there working with her. And we went on through various mergers, as you know, and here we are today. But I was on a team back when teams were not a thing. As a matter of fact, nobody kind of knew what to do with teams back then, and we were in the top 100 under the Prudential network in the country. And as my career changed and grew, I was given an opportunity to get involved in management, which I took, and that leads me to where I am today. So I don't sell anymore. I oversee 8 offices and about 1,000 agents, and I work on a team of regional presidents for, Berkshire Hathaway, Fox and Roach, and it's great.
Which your footprint is huge. For those that don't know Fox and Roach's background, they have so many big areas that they're in. But I found it. I didn't realize you reload to London, that's a big deal. I was in relocation, so that's very cool to learn about you. One of the things that I do is every episode of Women Who Lead, we think about, we strategize, and this one we really thought about how important it was to be resilient during this time, especially as we handle the different changes that we're currently going through. And for those that don't know, our industry is going through amazing challenges and also opportunities and a lot of changes. So how are each of you able to guide our agents, your loan officers, your teams through these difficult times? And I'll pivot back to you, Debbie.
Well, I think you're right. We're going through a lot of changes right now. And I think with every change, we have to remember change does present us with opportunities. If I look back at my own career, I would actually say the hardest parts in my career, the changes I made were actually what pivoted me toward bigger and better things. And you don't realize it at the time, but the easy wins aren't always the ones that get you to the next level. It's those really hard deals, whether you're a sales agent where you learn a ton just on one deal, or if you're, managing a company, it's those mergers, it's change of leadership around you, it's change of policies. I can remember back when there wasn't, buyer agency, there was only seller agency when I got started. So I think navigating through all that, and it started for me even back at Deloitte. I was there when Deloitte merged with Deloitte and Touche. So I went through that whole big merger and then did it again. But I think being there for my agents and my management team is critical. It's bringing that perspective. It's giving empathy. It's listening and, just being available and navigating through change. It's critical.
It really is. And I remember those changes and challenges too, right? Beth, I know that the lending industry has definitely experienced many changes, which really kind of helps, right? Because I remember thinking the Dodd-Frank, is it the
Mm.
tweet?
Yep.
Is it what was the one tweeds or the one that when you had to agents couldn't get paid commission or something? I remember that one was tough too. So you've gone through a lot of changes as well, right?
Well, yeah, and here's what I'll say, and I heard this term recently, so I did steal it, but it's don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. So the thing is, this industry, whether you're on the lending side or whether you're on the realty side or you're a third party and providing services, it's constantly changing. The constant is change. In fact, if it's not changing, you're probably not in the industry at all. So I think it's just, especially for people that didn't go through like the 2008 to 2010 or people that, didn't go through the Dodd-Frank phase of change, those that got into the industry after that probably haven't experienced this exact type of change as of yet. And, what I'll say is education is key because fear is going to be what's at the top of everybody's news feeds. And fear is what is going to, be driving all of the social media stuff. So really kind of go beyond that and learn about the specific pieces that are changing. And then how can you turn that into opportunity? Because there is always a way to turn it into opportunity. But it starts with education for yourself. So you feel really confident. And then that confidence sells. We all know that. And then being able to inspire that confidence in your clients and your customers and your partners. That's the key for me.
Oh, I love that. And so true that, I love that your quote. I think is definitely spot on. And I know Veronica, Debbie mentioned that buyer agency has been around for a while in her area. It's been in Atlanta too. In fact, when I started in real estate, it was the first year that Beretta, we call it Beretta, was passed here. And so we have always done buyer agency. It's very different though, the term, right? And how you're going to do things. How has that affected your market, and how do you guide your agents through all of these different changes that we're undergoing?
Yeah, and I mean, back back in the day, it was a sub agency, And so buyer agency has been here as well in Arizona for many, many, many years. And now we've had a buyer broker employment agreement that goes along with that. And it's not mandatory yet, but a lot of brokers are making it mandatory to use. And so I think that will be a change coming up. And I agree with it. We make, on a sell side, we have an exclusive right to sell is what we call for our listing contract, and that's mandatory. So it would make sense to have a mandatory contract for the buyer. So I agree that all this is opportunity and we can be better. Change makes us better, right? So I'm looking at this as an exciting time, and I want to motivate the agents to be excited about change, not fear it, and embrace it, right? So we can go forward with a plan of action that, hey, let's make this better. Let's dissect how we can make this work and better, and educate the clients. The consumers are confused, probably more so than the agents. So we need to educate the clients and the consumers as well and be better at it. So we're advocates of home ownership. We should be the best, right? And this change, I think, is a good thing. So just, yeah.
I love that. And for all of us in the industry, we also advocate, making sure, being that it's Fair Housing Month, that we're representing all groups. And I think for a long time, Beth, you hit it with the education, that's really the most critical piece, because there has been a lot of lack of education for the consumer. They don't really understand how we operate, how we get paid, how, they have this, a different mentality that we're all, on salaries, right? That's how we operate for the most part. So I think that, Veronica, you hit it right on the spot, that education and really making sure that the clients understand our role. Beth, I am really excited because I believe that my experience through NARA really catapulted my leadership skills, because for a long time I was internal, I was a real estate agent. I actually also did relocation, but I know you are now involved with the Greater Phoenix chapter and are in leadership. And how's that helped you, or develop into a leader, as it did for me, I believe.
Yeah, and I fairly recently, I will say, got involved with NAREP. And when I first got involved, it was just kind of as an attendee, right? Went to a couple of events, did some tabling for my company. And what I realized is their key and core priorities really aligned with kind of my internal core priorities, building generational wealth and being able to create home ownership are things that I know from personal experience can make or break somebody's life and trajectory. And it's so important. I mean, if you guys have seen some of the insights related to the growth of the Hispanic Latino population and just how big this cultural sector is, and then when you look at how many of those individuals are in like that middle school range, and just how important the home piece and the generational wealth is going to be just for our entire economy. Again, whether you're Hispanic, Latino origin or not, I happen to be, but whether you are or not, it's something that I think everyone can really get passionate about, because it's really going to impact our entire growth of of the United States. And so when I saw that core piece of providing education, providing home ownership, and then it just happens to fall really closely in line with what I do for my day job, I wanted to get more involved. But I will say, and I love that, this is a women's focused event, because I was really scared, which seems kind of silly thinking about it now, but I had never been on a board before. I had done so much internal to my organization, but I've always been in that corporate setting. So I'd never been part of a board, and just taking that step of releasing the fear and going into something unknown has been such a tremendous learning experience, because it is a completely different structure than what I've experienced and what I do for my day job and what I've done in the past. And that alone has provided just tremendous growth. And I've gotten to know such amazing people and really just excited about continuing the mission.
I love it. One of the biggest things I think is the advantage that as we do have our conferences, Beth and Veronica, we get to meet people from all over the country and the world.
Yeah.
NAREP's conferences are very similar in that you learn so much and you get to network and connect with people that are from different parts of the country. And so anytime I go to any chapter or any city, I'm always like, okay, who's there? Because
Yep.
there's a NAREP chapter where I've got friends where I can call and say, let's go grab lunch. So I agree. The experience is amazing in the leadership side. And I know one of the things that we all talked about, and Debbie, you mentioned failures or new challenges or anything, anytime you learn from those. So what strategies do you use to learn from them and move forward effectively? And I'll hit that one to you right now.
Well, I think, you know, as we navigate challenges and change and failures, and we all have them, there's nobody that doesn't. One could say I was cursed. I was also blessed to have challenges very early on in my life, sad things. And we all do have sad things, but I lost my sister when I was 15 and my mom died when I was 28. And things like that created a resilience in me early on. So I think as I've navigated through changes in the industry, that has paid off. And some people maybe don't get that situation that gives them those challenges until maybe later in life. And I kind of learned it early on. So I think I've carried that through into everything I've done. And I've always, as I listen to the rest of you, giving back and being involved with other things always has carried me through challenges. So for example, when we had the COVID situation 4 years ago, literally, they shut down our industry. I mean, that was pretty dramatic. And I look back and remember, but it was because of all my involvement with so many other organizations. As you mentioned, I was the Mainline Chamber. And I was talking to other businesses and what are you doing? Not just real estate people, but what are you doing at banks? What are you doing at utilities? What are you doing in law firms? And we all learned how we were going to navigate through this change. So I think my perspective is always learn about others. And that holds through with today with real estate. We're all in this together, no matter what brokerage you work for, and we're all going to succeed. And I believe at Berkshire Hathaway, we're going to succeed even more. But we are all in this. We're going to navigate through these changes. So whether I'm dealing with an agent or one of my managers, I just try to listen. I try to ask questions, help them come up with the answers, not me give the answers always. Because if I just spoon feed the answers, first of all, they could be wrong, but that's not part of the growing process.
Well, your perspective is so great because you're looking at things that happened to you and how you were able to become resilient, but also the fact that you are so connected with different groups through the work that you do that you are able to say, "Hey, Beth, how, what's happening in your world and how are you or you've gone through this before, how can we go through it?" I think that's a great way to
And I'll
lead your teams.
And I'll just add to, and Veronica can capture this, and I hate to defer to running it, but running is part of the fabric of me. When they use the expression that you hit the wall, you absolutely hit the wall. If you're running 26 miles at about mile 18, 19, you think there is no fucking way I'm going to get through this. And your body is shutting down and you bring up everything you've got in you and you finish. And you keep visualizing the finish. You visualize how you're going to get there and what's going to happen. And it's true with any of these challenges. You have to be able to say, okay, it's really bad, or it's really hard right now, but we'll get there.
Again, I like that. And I wasn't familiar with that term. So Veronica, you might add on to that because I'm not a runner. I played soccer in college and high school and I injured my knee. So my doctor said, no running. You cannot run or, because I have bad knees for that reason. So I walk and hike like you were, like I know Veronica, you got the hiking piece now. So a little bit about how about you, challenges and setbacks?
Well, as I relate a lot to what Debbie's history, I experienced a great loss when I was in my 20s. And when you have a great loss of someone really close to you, you have empathy, but it's like a deeper sense of empathy. So you can relate to people on such a deep level. And so whether an agent's having something going on with a transaction or something that's devastating in their personal life, we're now their mentor, we're their counselor, and they come to us first. So it is also pausing. I think there's a lot of people who react, and you gotta almost brace yourself from reacting first and absorb it, digest it, and then go, okay, now let's take a deep breath and let's move forward. We're always going to be moving forward, but we kind of have to pause before we can. So giving us that, in a sense, the white space, the space in between of before you can move forward and allow that to happen. So, and that can be put into, like I said, you're having a battle with the other agent on the other side, or the parties aren't getting along on the contract, or in your personal life, you're having something major affecting you. So pause, take it all in, and go, okay, now I can move forward. And when she's saying, Debbie, you're talking about hitting the wall, I remember that's why I've only done one marathon. It was mile 16. I had newer shoes. And if you're a runner, you'll understand, don't ever change your shoes right before a run. And I had to, so they were newer, and my heels were just, there was no skin left. And I was like, but I'm at mile 16. I've got to finish this. I'm not going to give up. And I walked the last few miles in because I was shuffling at that point. But I was like, I'm going to finish. And it does. You think I can't get any more. And everyone's like, it's okay. Just do it, heal and then do it. I'm like, no, I'm going to finish. I have to finish. And you realize you have more in you, right, to keep going. So there's always that discipline and that. And if you're not a runner and you do something else, I think you can find that when the challenge is there. And so any challenge, you'll dive deeper. You always will dive deeper.
Oh, your analogy of stop and pause and just you got to, this is happening. That's like my son has anxiety attacks, and that's the biggest, when you have an anxiety, it's because your fear, and they tell him just stop, breathe, calm down, because it's nothing, right? Your mind is playing tricks with you, and you can overcome anything when you do that. And I like that you overcame and were able to make it through that threshold line, because that is so difficult when you are doing anything. Just to say, okay, am I going to see the end? I know COVID for us was one of those things. Are we ever going to see the end? And yesterday I was shopping and I realized, oh my God, nobody's wearing a mask. Do you remember spraying and mask and don't touch this side? All these things that today we've overcome. I know being a woman is also somewhat difficult when we are leading an organization. I've had challenges, I'll be honest with you. How about you, Beth? How you're young, you are in a leadership role. What challenges have you, or have you had none? Because I know things have changed, right? As it pertains to being a leader and a strong woman leader.
It's funny. So Veronica and Debbie, I'm not a runner, but the things that you guys have said resonated so much with me. So my biggest challenge actually came before I came into the industry. I was in college, and I had my first two kids while I was in college, which at the time, could have been seen as maybe a little bit of a setback. But the challenges that can't come along with doing that and going to school and working, what you really find yourself doing is getting really focused. And I think that's the key. And you kind of said it, Veronica. You have to really hyper hone in on what's important and kind of let everything else go. Otherwise, it's impossible to get through that moment and get to the other side. And that's really how I look back on how I ended up getting through that successfully in my, my own version of success, right? Graduating college and getting into a career was because I wasn't focused on some of the things that, I would have had the time and the energy to do if it had been a different circumstance. And then going into the business world, the thing is, going through challenges, and Debbie and Veronica, you guys mentioned that you guys have had challenges in your early 20s as well. It builds this grit that really allows you to see things from a completely different perspective. And so you really look at things as there really are no bad days. There are moments that you have to learn from, but there really are no bad days. And I'll say, coming into the industry 16, almost 17 years ago, I was one of the only women that I worked with, period. And there were a couple of women leaders, but they were very far and few between. And so when I started managing teams in my 20s, and a lot of these teams were mostly men that were much older than me that had done a lot more in their career, that had been in the industry for a very long time. I think one of the challenges was just that initial first reaction, right? Because the first reaction is not always a positive thing, right? And so I think that's where branding comes in. For me, it was all about building my brand and ensuring that everything that I did resonated with that brand. And my brand, I knew, had to overcome the fact that I was a young woman in a male-dominated industry.
I love that idea of building your brand and realizing that's how you overcome it, because you are in an industry that is definitely dominated by men, right? And ours is the opposite. Ours is the real estate industry, and agents really are dominated by women. However, many leadership roles are not. Wouldn't y'all agree? So, especially the higher level C-suite roles, you don't see that many, women in those roles. And Debbie, you are one in unique scenario because you have a lot of female leaders within the Fox and Roach umbrella. You always have, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So have you had
Well,
any scenarios or?
I definitely have, I started again back in public accounting, where again, it was a 50-50 when we came out of college. But when then you looked at the partner level, it was 85% men. And one of the things I did when I became a manager, and I'm proud to say this, was I was the first part-time manager at Deloitte. And I asked for it. And they at first were like, well, no, we don't do that. And again, I think you can sit back and accept or be critical of things, but you also have to just sometimes ask for the business, ask for the change. So that was before we left for London. I became a part-time manager with Deloitte. Who knows if it stalled my career because I left, but I did have that good experience. And now there's way more women at that level. And then with real estate, I share this story. I think I shared it with you, Teresa. So if you met me first and you didn't know what I did, but you asked about my personal life first, I would share with you maybe that I'm married and I'm the mother of 5 children. And right there, the unconscious bias in your brain would assume that I'm not successful in a job. And that is reality today. If I go into social settings or I get involved in something outside of real estate work, and you meet people, you're on a committee, you're doing something, and they find that out first, they just assume that you don't have much of a job. Whereas I can tell you that never happens to my husband. It never is a thought. So I think there's unconscious bias that still exists in our world, and we're working to overcome it. And there's a lot of things we can do. But that's, what I've always thought, and I continue to advise young women when they're in the field and, they're trying to raise a family is, just keep going forward and ask. And don't be afraid. You're good at what you do. They will see that you're good at what you do, and they will make whatever you want done. Just ask for it, and then you work around it.
First of all, what a great piece of advice because so many of us are held back because we want people to tap us instead of asking for the job. Instead of going and that's something that men don't do always. I mean, they'll just go after even if they don't have the qualifications. Oh, I deserve that job. So I think that is great insight. Also, Beth, I meant to say, I don't know how you did college and finished while you had two kids that were small, because I had my two small and took the real estate course and thought I would never ever get through that. I was like, oh my God, just doing that real estate course with kids. And so handling all that. And Debbie, I think it's so true, and I'm one of those, I stayed at home for the first 5 years, of my, when the kids were little. And I found it so, so wonderful. I mean, I really loved that. And there's a lot of value in that. But also when I did go out to the world and worked, it was never a concern about Mike picking up the kids for, like, I would have to leave to go pick up the kids for soccer or all that. It was always and still is my responsibility. And it is for the majority of women. It's changing. I think our Gen Z and our millennials are learning a little bit more, but in most cases, that's still the situation. Veronica, how about you?
I can relate to all of you. I've had two young girls in my 20s as I was starting real estate, and I did not have a great partner, husband. And a lot of people would assume, like, when you go through divorce, you go through this, and at the same time, there's all these things happening. And at that time, it was 2008 when the market was crashing. So you got market issues, and I was commission only because I was sales, two young children at home. I was losing my mind. So you've got market challenges, and being an agent in that time, the commissions were tough. You worked hard for those commissions. Short sale could take 9 months at that in the early stages. So you're working very hard. And I think with some of the bias, people would go, well, aren't you getting, child support? I'm like, I made more money. Like, the assumption was your
Yes.
husband was taking care of you. And that was not my world. And so it was like, I don't want to get into all my, personal details, but not the case. So it really made it a challenge of, there was this assumption of, oh, I must be getting something from this other person, and I'm not. So having the two young kids, having the market crash and going, and then people just assuming because you're the woman, you're getting a bonus. I'm like, no, I'm actually working extra hard now. So it's that, and you can relate that to, and moms out there are not necessarily getting the help, and sometimes you are stressed out, and we need to complement each other. We need to support each other always. We never know what's going on, and through the years, there's been moments where maybe someone said, oh, in a transaction, a party affiliate is going to say, well, you're cute, or you're this. And it's like, hang on, I'm a business person right now. None of that's happening. Like, let's keep it business. And there's always going to be those moments, and you just have to go place your boundary down and say, I'm flattered, but this is a business transaction, and I'm not going to involve that. And you've got to just, keep your line, your boundaries straight, right? And sometimes you have to say it. You have to be assertive.
Vocal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Vocal.
say it. So.
Well, Veronica, first of all, that had to be, I mean, I couldn't even step into your shoes. What a huge overcoming, all the things that you had to come, single mom, divorce, going through this time during the worst time of our industry. It's literally
Yeah.
2008. I think those times, we look now, but those times were really, really tough
Very.
to make money because we were not selling homes and people couldn't, buy, they couldn't buy, so it was like a standstill. So gosh, kudos to you for bringing that up. And also you touched me with the fact that you said we all have to be kind to each other. We never know what we're going through. And that's something that's so true, right? There's so many challenges that women have. So I think one of the things that, and men too, because I have a son that I have two kids and they're my world, right? Um, so one of the things that I think really helps is mentorship. It really helps other women because it helps me. I mean, it helps us even as mentors because you learn from yourself about things and then you learn from your mentees. So I know you all mentor. So I'll start with you, Beth, because I know that's a big part of your world too. So how has
Yeah.
that influenced you? What role does it play for you? And also, how do you, help others in that role?
So the thing about mentorship is it's easier for other people to see the best parts of you versus yourself. I think we're all very self-critical of ourselves. And so when you have a really good mentor, they can inspire things in you that are already there and just show you that they're there. And the other thing about mentorship is I'll say is it's a really easy word to say, but mentorship can be really challenging because it can feel, if you've never had a mentor, everybody's going to tell you go get a mentor.
Hmm.
And that can be really challenging because number one, it's kind of awkward to ask somebody to be your mentor. And then I think if you have never been a mentor yourself, you don't realize that it's something that that other person probably gets a lot of value out of. So it feels like a nuisance to them. Or that's what you're thinking. And then also it's like, okay, what do I do now? I have a mentor. I've got a meeting set up. What do I do now? And so I think it's really important. And the great thing is there's the internet. And so you can like figure out like a lot of really great things about mentorship and questions to ask and how to structure your meeting. But I think the mentee is really what drives the relationship. A good mentee is the best thing that a mentor can ask for because, and I think what defines a good mentee, it's somebody that wants help with something specific. So that's, I think, the key. It's like they know where their gaps are or where their perceived gaps are, and they come to the table with what they want from you, and they're not afraid to ask that. Because then it can get, again, very stale and very kind of awkward if they don't come prepared knowing what they want or knowing what they need help with. So I think the first thing is don't be afraid to ask for the help that you really need, and don't be afraid to be very vulnerable about the pieces of you that you think are missing to get you to whatever that next step might look like. The other thing is there's a big difference between sponsors and mentors. And I think that term can get a little bit commingled because for mentorship, it's really, hey, I'm going to help you by giving you great advice. Whereas a sponsor is going to be somebody that says, wow, you're incredible. And I am going to look for opportunities to showcase how amazing you are to help you get to that next step. And I think every mentor relationship is an opportunity to really go into that sponsorship. But again, it's all about the mentee driving that relationships, being consistent, and really being forthcoming about what they need. I love it. I'm very passionate about it because I wouldn't be here today without the mentors that I've had. And honestly, most of my early mentors were very informal. It wasn't like a formal mentorship pairing. It was people that resonated with me that I came to for help, and they were gracious enough to do that, and they're really great friends of mine to this day. I would not have been able to get where I am as fast as I did without having all of those gaps filled by people that have done it before. And so I'm very passionate about it. And now I participate in several different mentoring programs. Tomorrow, Teresa, you're going to hear a little bit about how we're going to get a little bit more proactive with mentorship with the Greater Phoenix chapter. Because I just understand how impactful it can be for somebody's trajectory or just somebody's life. I mentor several different people within my organization through different mentorship programs as well. And I think it's just something that everybody should do and strive to do, is be a mentor and have a mentor.
It makes such a huge significance in other people's lives. but organic mentorship is really what I call the most normal because of, those official mentor programs now are starting to be seen more, but weren't as available to many of us. How about you, Debbie?
Yeah, and you just highlighted that point. So I have been involved in over the years in different roles in what I call more of a formal mentorship or a leadership development program and things like that. But as I look back and I thought about who were the mentors in my life, they were not the ones that were ever assigned to me. They were the ones that, started off with my first job into, working with Berkshire Hathaway, different people that were not necessarily a formal mentor, but that I connected with, both men and women, that I can count on one or two hands who were the most significant in my career. And it was people that took an interest, that motivated me, that inspired me. And probably none of them were formal mentors, which is interesting because I've done both. And, you actually made me start to think just then, maybe I wasn't really good when I was a formal mentor, but I know there are agents and managers out there that would say that I helped pivot or change their career. So I'm always of the philosophy of giving, and nothing brings me more joy or satisfaction when somebody that I've been either talking to a lot or a little, but when you talk them through a situation and they call you back and they say, thank you, it worked, or thanks to
That's
you.
the best feeling,
Oh,
right?
it's what keeps us going.
It
So
really is. You made a
that,
difference in my life, right? Yeah.
yeah. And I think, that's what we all want to look back on, when they put us in the ground one day and we look back and people say, you made a difference in my life.
That's beautiful. That's beautifully said, Debbie. And Veronica, I'm gonna finish up with you.
Yeah, well, the giving part, I think, so Beth, you're saying the mentee, if they have to be willing to do the work, right? They have to be engaging and plugged in to what you're, and if they're a little lost, we can guide them and structure something, right, to be more formal, but then they have to want it and be there. And I think, yeah, most of it was informal for myself. I had, while the first real estate job, while in high school, was with a very successful uh, owner broker. And I was like, okay, he's successful for a reason, right? I've got to watch what he does. So I was a sponge, just soaking it up, watching what is he doing? Why is he winning the listings? Why is he number one? And then he introduced me to my next mentor, which was a past president of our state association. And that really opened my eyes with the bigger world, because I'm just an agent at that point thinking just real estate. And then I'm like, oh, there's so much more that goes into it, and having that, um, being a president and being her assistant while she was a president, I'm watching and hearing everything that she's doing, and it really opened, like, whoa, okay, there's so much more to this. And then the next person that I worked with was part of professional standards, where basically here in Arizona, if there's a complaint going on, then they go into a panel of peers of agents, and they basically give a sentence, in a sense of, this is now what you need to do to improve. Take some classes. Here you go. So hearing her when she came back from cases of all of that went on, it was like, whoa, my it was another expansion. So all the mentors I've had expanded, my knowledge base, and now I get to share that. It's the giving part. So I love sharing it. I mean, and it keeps us growing, and it keeps us relevant, right?
It
So
does.
yeah, so being relevant is how you stay in the game, is being a mentor.
Well,
So
Veronica, you said something that was really important. The mentee really has to follow that advice. Sometimes if they don't, it's like, okay, it didn't work. Well, did you do what I asked? Some of the things
yeah,
that you thought would help. So I think that's really critical. And also the sponsorship, Beth, that you mentioned earlier, there is a difference. And the significance of that is really important to kind of make sure to mention, because for me, Gino Blafari, our CEO, was not just a mentor. And again, it was organic. It wasn't like he mentored me but he was a sponsor. He actually said, nope, I see you running our D&I initiatives. And I'm like, me? I mean, so it was like having him elevate me to that role. That was such a huge thing and made a huge impact in my life. So I could not, got to give kudos and a shout out to Gina. We are almost out of time, believe it or not. So I'm going to ask y'all two really quick questions as we wrap up. And the first one is, what advice would you give to the, next generation of women who lead? What advice would you give them, as to how to deal with change, how to be resilient? I'll start with you, Beth.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And bottom line, just don't be afraid. I think that's the key, is you have to be okay with not being perfect, and you have to not be afraid to take those scary steps in directions you've never gone in before, because that in my career is where I have had the biggest growth, is going and doing things that make me a little bit scared.
It is so true, so true. How about you, Debbie?
Yeah, along the same lines, I'd say get back on the horse. You're going to fall off. You're going to, like you said, make mistakes. You need to accept them. You need to think about why they happened, but you've got to get up and get back on the horse and not wait. You've got to just keep moving forward. And if you get caught up, if you get stuck and you don't get back on that horse, then that's where, failure starts to overtake you. So just get back on the horse.
Keep going, keep going. I love that, Debbie. Veronica?
Yeah, I think with the, making a mistake and then owning it. Okay, it happened. I'm owning it. And then, like you're saying, is Debbie, is figuring out why it didn't work, moving forward, and keep perseverance. Like, you've got to keep going. When you feel like you hit the wall, keep going. So you got to keep going.
Well, I think that is, first of all, the fact that you said own it, because a lot of people will make the mistake or something will go wrong and they won't take the, initiative, say, hey, I was the leader. It was my responsibility. Yes, so and so did it or whoever, but I was the one that this happened, right? So I need to own it and let's move forward and figure out, because in the end, it really does always turn out to be the best thing, because you learn from that as well. And others do too. So as we wrap up, I always like, every time we end our show, I love to end with the great quote, reads, podcasts, that resonates with you. And just, if you'll let me know why it resonates, that'd be great. And again, I'll start with you, Veronica.
Well, mine's comedic. I always am laughing. You have to laugh every day. Number one, you have to laugh every day. But there's a skit, and I said this on another recording, but it really relates. It's like you're overthinking things. So Bob Newhart has a skit where he does the skit, and it's called Stop It. So it's the simplicity of just stop it. Like, stop the chatter in your head. Stop overthinking it. Just stop it. So if you can look that up, it's a funny skit. It's a few minutes, but he's sitting and he's a therapist, and people are coming in for his advice, and all he says is stop it. And so it's simple, but it works. So
I have to see that. I have to look up that skit for sure. How about you, Veronica? How about you, Beth? I'm sorry, I'm looking at the way the screen is.
So, one of the books that I've read fairly recently within the last couple of years that really resonated is Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And one of the quotes that really just resonates with me within that book is, women need to shift from thinking, I'm not ready to do that, to thinking, I want to do that and I'll learn by doing it. And it really goes towards what you said, Teresa, a little bit earlier in the podcast, where you're like, well, men will just go for that job even if they don't have all the qualifications, whereas a woman, our tendency is to wait to get tapped. And it's like, just don't always need to be the expert before you lean into going into whatever you want to do. And it just really, I wish I would have read the book a long time ago.
It is one of my favorite books. I mean, literally have it on my side table. It, learn so much, and I go reread it. I actually listen to it because I'm a audio books listener. So either one, for those that prefer books or prefer the audio portion, you can certainly access it. And then Debbie, I'll let you finalize the.
So I had to do my homework for this one because for those that know me, you remember I'm a numbers girl. So the words, I'm like thinking about it. But one of the people that when I got into real estate and the quotes I often heard from other leaders were all from Zig Ziglar. And so when I was thinking for this today, I was like, where shall I go think about the quote? Because I didn't have one that came right to my head, but I did go that I knew that he was the go-to. So I have two that I pulled from him that I've heard multiple times. And one is, remember that failure is an event, not a person. That was sort of the negative one, or not negative, but that was that view. And then the other one that I always love is, if you can dream it, you can achieve it.
Oh, that one's one of my favorite because it's so true. And I love that, not an event, right?
It's not an event.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just an event. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great one to end our broadcast. And I can't believe this has really flown by. And for all of us, that's a wrap up of today's episode. And I really want to thank all of you. And I hope you found as much inspiration in the stories shared by our incredible guests as I did. And remember, resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about bouncing forward stronger and more determined than ever before. And I love that quote. I want to express my deepest gratitude to our guests for their openness, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to leadership. And to you, our cherished viewers, again, and listeners, thank you for joining on today's journey of empowerment and discovery. I hope you'll join me again on April 24th for Diversity Matters. We've got special guest who is the president of Professional Women in Building at the National Association of Home Builders, and you talk about challenges there, as well as on May 8th for another great episode of Women Who Lead. And we're going to feature daughters who have followed in the business of their mothers for that event. And my daughter is actually going to be a guest. So I'm nervous as I'll get out for that event on the 8th. So I encourage you to get connected and share us on social media, and also continue the conversation. Together we can uplift, empower, and celebrate women who lead in every aspect of life. Until next time, ladies, bye-bye, everyone.